Ryan Lancaster,
Present.
Walter Steed,
Here.
Tracy Hopkins,
Here.
Stephen Lewis,
Here.
Jared Smith, Tom LeClaire,
Here.
Joseph Leckie, Luke Kavanagh, Sean Martin, Tony Tisdale,
Mr. Chair, there's a few people that are coming in Zoom that I've got to get promoted real quick, sorry.
We're going to hold for a minute while a few more people are being admitted to the meeting via the virtual connection. So please hold.
Hi, Mr. Chair, I'm here. This is Tony at Compass.
Hi, Tony. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. All right, so Tony Tisdale present. Ian Updike,
Present.
Alyssa Taysom.
Present.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. Justin Price.
Here.
Okay, I'll go back. Jared Smith.
Present.
Okay. Joseph Leckie.
Here.
Okay. Luke Kavanagh. Okay. Sean Martin. Do we have anyone from ACHD? Okay. And I see Ted Bear as legal counsel, or city legal counsel. Caleb Hood is also online.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Caleb. Mr. Hood. I've got a box says Commissioner T. Don't have the full name, so is there, who do I recognize whose name just says Commissioner T? Okay, Stephen Hunt, I see you. Thank you, sir.
That's Tracy.
Tracy, is that you?
Where?
Commissioner T?
Commissioner T is Tracy.
Oh, yeah, probably.
All right. So we have the roll call completed. Adoption of agenda, before we get to that, we've got a very full schedule today in planning this agenda. We're roughly at a 2-hour, 15-minute, 2-hour, or excuse me, 3:30, 5:30. So we're at the 2-hour minute, or 2-hour mark, about 120 minutes. I've been asked to keep a bit of a time clock, and we've allocated minutes to the various subjects. And I will ask that as we make comments, going to work with maybe a 2-minute comment period to weigh in. We have a lot to get through today. In particular, the priorities, road priorities, but that's going to be part of today's meeting and January's meeting so we can get our information to City Council by February. So I'll be watching a little bit of the time, so I ask for your cooperation. We have about half, I'm just looking at the numbers, maybe more than half are attending virtually. So I will ask, unless you're specifically called on or you want to enter in, if you'll hit the raise your hand button, just the protocol so that we can not talk over one another. With that being said, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Next item of business, approval of minutes from November 2, 2020. Commissioners, did you notice any changes, comments, additions? Mr. Lewis?
No, I didn't notice anything, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I do notice in the top first line, meeting called to order at 3XX. We did have a technical problem. My recollection is that meeting started at about 3:35 and then restarted at about 4:15. If that's acceptable, I would ask to amend that to show that the meeting was called to order at 3:35. That's my recollection. Mr. Lewis, do you put that in the form of a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes as corrected.
Mr. Lancaster? Is there a
Second. Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Old business. Okay, so we've got that, okay, excuse me, I guess I jumped ahead. I was asking to make that change to 3:55. Is that a motion approving the minutes in their entirety except with that change?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So moving on then. Old business, the transportation projects update.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Carson.
So there are a few items in the project updates I want to highlight. I'm not going to read through all of them, but the Linder Overland to Franklin project, a joint letter of support is going to be sent to the Idaho Transportation Board requesting the project be added to the STIP. That letter is between the city and the ACHD Commission, and it can be found in the staff communications portion of the memo on page 29. On the Eagle Road Amity to Victory roundabout, I just wanted to highlight a few changes there in the updates. Due to concerns by City Council, the ACHD team met to explore some more options for the multi-use pathway crossing. The two preferred strategies they came up with were striping yield lines, also known as shark teeth, at the local streets. And at Rome Drive, they're going to explore modifying the existing landscaping to increase visibility. On the next page, the Eagle Road Lake Hazel to Amity project. I just wanted to note that the draft scope of work is in the staff communications, and we'll discuss it further when we come to the staff communications. The Fairview Locust Grove to Eagle is the bike lane. The design work is ongoing, and the design team is exploring some different asphalt options, as well as what material will be used to paint the bike lane and what pattern will be used on that bike lane. VRT also requested a bus consideration for a future bus stop on the far side of Hickory Way. Wanted to let you know there'll likely be an open house around March of 2021 before 95% design is complete. And ACHD thinks that construction may be delayed on that project to 2024. On the ITD projects, the I-16 to Linder Chinden West corridor is complete, and the Locust Grove Road to Eagle Road and Linder Road to Locust Grove Road, the work is underway on both of those portions. Also noting on the Harvest Lifestyle Service, and Mr. Hunt will expand on this more during his presentation, but staff is reviewing an option to add service from Meridian to the Veterans Administration in Boise as part of that Harvest transit service that we currently have. And then just as a reminder, that is an on-demand service. And then the last thing I want to highlight is that Ada County is kicking off the development of the Ada County Transportation Action Plan. And the city has been invited to participate in the process. It's the very beginning of the process. We just received the invitation, but I just wanted to let the commission know that that plan is being developed. Those are the only updates I plan to highlight, but if there are any questions, I can take those.
Commissioners, questions for Ms. Carson on updates on the highway projects? Road projects? Okay. Move on to new business action items. Number 3, Meridian Police Department update. Sergeant Frazier, I see that you've joined us virtually.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's been a while since I've been able to join the commission. Just a couple of brief updates, I suppose. We had mentioned earlier in the year that we had worked with OHS to get grant money for overtime funding for traffic and highway safety issues into fiscal year 2021. And we are in the final stages of finishing that up, and we're starting to be able to use that money right now towards highway safety endeavors. So we'll be focusing on that throughout the next year, which will be a good thing. We have a long partnership with OHS to work towards highway safety. The only transportation or traffic update is I'm very happy that the new Costco opening in Meridian hasn't ground North Meridian to a complete halt. And it's good to see the construction up there in the north and northwest areas of the city, Black Cat, Ustick, 10 Mile, and Chinden, either being done or pretty close to it. That allows us in the fire department to get up to those areas a whole lot easier. And you can tell the motoring public is very happy with that as well. There are a lot of people out and about. It's starting to be the holiday season. I would encourage everybody to tell their friends and family to drive safe and drive sober. Thankfully, around the Thanksgiving timeframe, we really didn't have too many collisions or drunk driving involved instances, and hopefully it'll stay that way through the end of the year. And I think that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions. And also, Mr. Ballard, Chairman Ballard, I don't know if it's me, but you're kind of hard to hear. I don't know if it's a technical issue or a microphone issue.
Sergeant, is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Any questions for Sergeant Frazier? Very good, Sergeant Frazier. Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Item 4, Valley Regional Transit update. Stephen Hunt.
Hello, Commissioners. Glad to be here. This is Stephen Hunt with the Development Director at Valley Regional Transit, and I'll be presenting on 3 items today. And Miranda, I wasn't certain if I was going to be you.
Mr. Hunt, if you can, you should be able to request control to share your screen.
And share a screen. There it is. Now I've got to find the right screen to share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So, as I mentioned, there will be three things that I'll be talking about today. One is a cooperative agreement, and second is a little bit more of an update on the Harvest Transit and potential enhancements there. And then we'll also be talking about a recommendation related to the fixed route service expansion in Meridian. So, first of all, with the cooperative agreement, for the last 2 years or so, VRT has been working with our partners on updating. Well, every year we go out to our partners and enter into a cooperative agreement to fund the services and well, the services and planning that we provide to each of our partners. And the last 2+ years, we've been updating that process with the local cost allocation methodology. And what we are proposing to do is simplify the cooperative agreement to acknowledge that methodology that we've been putting into place and make it easier for us to make sure that we're able to leverage all of the resources coming into VRT from our various partners. So as I go through this presentation, I hope that you received an email from Miranda earlier with a PDF attachment. I will be speaking to each one of those one at a time, and there's more information in there that will be useful to you, particularly related to this, that has some examples of what the current cooperative agreement looks like and what the proposed agreement would change to. The purpose of simplifying the agreement is in years past, we've had the specific services that are provided included in the agreement itself, both in the referenced both in the whereases and in the agreement itself. And with the local cost allocation methodology serving as background and available upon request, we're proposing that we would remove the specifics of the services from either the whereas and the agreement itself, and speak generally about the categories of investments and the ability for VRT to use those resources for the agreed upon services and leverage them as much as we can for provision of either services or capital investments. This ensures that we're able to maintain a level of transparency on what's being funded, as well as flexibility in how we apply those resources within a given year. So the purpose of my presentation today is to make the commission aware of some actions that we'll be hoping to take and have any dialogue about them. So I'm hoping that from the handout that you received from Miranda earlier, that makes some sense about the cooperative agreement. It may make sense to take questions as we move through these one at a time. I just have one slide on each topic. So if there are any questions about the cooperative agreement, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Questions for Mr. Hunt?
Next on the, if I may move ahead, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Next in the presentation is an update on Harvest Transit. So as Ms. Carson mentioned, we are looking at ways to expand the use and build on the success of Harvest Transit. There's been an identified gap in service, which is there's no connection between Meridian and the Boise VA currently. And given the impacts of COVID-19 on 2020, we did not spend as much as we had anticipated on Harvest Transit because the demand was lower. So we were looking at ways that we might be able to actually enhance the services provided through Harvest Transit at low or no cost to the current agreements. So we have just started in the last several weeks working with our staff to identify any opportunities where we might be able to make a connection between Harvest Transit and the Veterans Administration, either directly or to connecting services to help make a connection between the City of Meridian residents and this service in the City of Boise. It's an extension of the services that are currently provided, and we're excited to look at how we might be able to meet this need for the City of Meridian. If there are any questions about that, I would be happy to take those at this time.
Mr. Hunt, do you have a ballpark figure of when, or you
So we're-
anticipate the connection with the VA?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have a specific schedule outlined. We have just begun looking at potential alternatives, but we do recognize the need and are interested in getting it started as soon as possible. It could be as early as the first quarter of not of the fiscal year, but so first quarter of 2021 calendar
Thank you.
year. Any other questions on Harvest Transit?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hunt, so just to clarify, is Harvest Transit currently providing services in Meridian and you're just looking to increase the connection with Boise? Or is it currently just operating in Boise and you're looking to bringing it into Meridian a little bit?
Good question, Mr. Chair. So Harvest Transit is a service that is provided within the City of Meridian. It's one of the services that is funded by the city and operated by Harvest Church, which is again in the City of Meridian, and supported through Valley Regional Transit. Last year before COVID, they had about 5,000 trips that they provided in 2019. That was down significantly in 2020 because of COVID. But we had identified through all of the last while a missing connection. So you all appreciate that the Veterans Medical Center in Boise is a county-wide facility. It serves, well, even bigger than that, but it serves more than just the City of Boise, and we were trying to make a connection for the City of Meridian residents to that facility. So this would be, and as I mentioned, it may not be a direct connection with Harvest Transit the entire way, but we were looking at how we could make that connection work within existing resources if possible.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving on, the last update that we wanted to provide is, as you know, we've been working with City of Meridian staff and you on developing a fixed route service expansion that would connect 10-mile crossing to the Kleiner Park area, serving downtown Meridian as well. One of the things that we heard from the public as we were rolling that system out was the importance of the importance of regional connections, both to the west in Nampa, but most especially to Boise and Town Square Mall. We started those conversations this past year, but haven't come to a conclusion in terms of how we would be able to extend that service into the City of Boise, and we are encouraged that we'll be able to get there, but it'll take just a little bit longer. And COVID-19 also has made all of our ridership projections lower than normal, and so we are making a recommendation to the City of Meridian that we delay the service expansion until 2022, which will give us the opportunity to hopefully make it through COVID-19, where ridership and travel demand will pick up again, as well as provide more time for better coordination between the cities and potentially make that connection from Kleiner Park on into Town Square Mall happen more concurrently with the implementation of the service from 10 Mile to Kleiner Park. So we are recommending delaying the service expansion, and that delay would also have one additional benefit of leveling out or smoothing out the local contribution forecast between 2020 this year, 2021 and 2023, as we ramp up service in Meridian. So with the expectation that we would be providing a full year of service in 2022, there is a big jump between what we were expecting to request in this year to next year, which is shown here on the slide. It's also the table that was in the packet or in the handout that Miranda sent. And so you can see the blue line compared to the blue bars compared to the orange bars. If we delay now, we'll be able to kind of ramp up to a full year service over a 2-year period rather than having to make that jump all at once. It also hedges against any long-term impacts of COVID without having to jump into a full year increase in 2022. So for a variety of reasons, we would be recommending to the City of Meridian and ultimately to the VRT board that we delay the implementation of the fixed route expansion until at least FY 2022. The specific date of that, whether that's October 1st, we still would be under discussion, but at least delay it through at least the end of 2021. And I would be happy to take any questions about this topic as well.
Questions for Mr. Hunt, commissioners? Well, very good, Mr. Hunt. Any other items for your presentation?
That is all that I had for today. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share that with you. We were excited about bringing additional services to the City of Meridian. We've been working hard on the capital improvements for the service extension or service expansion in Meridian, and those are well underway, as well as bringing the electric vehicles to Ada County. Those will be arriving early next year. So a lot of things moving forward as planned, but we feel it prudent to wait on actually implementing that service until both the demand is back and we have an opportunity to talk about hammer out the connections with the city of Boise. So appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt, and always we welcome you back another time to update us on what's going on with VRT and the transit activities.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Item 5, ACHD Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Priorities. Ms. Carson, we have a project overview before discussion, do we not?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Christy Inselman, I believe she's on Zoom. Let me check. Okay, I don't see her. I had one name on Zoom I didn't recognize. I'm not sure if maybe that's her. I will just give a brief overview of the process, and she may be jumping on. So the ACHD, the Ada County Highway Department, has an integrated 5-year work plan, and they invite the cities and all the public partners every year to make requests of what the projects that we want are. So the Transportation Commission, for those of you who have been on the past, are very familiar with this process. We look at all of our projects in the city of Meridian, and we prioritize how we want those done, what our highest priority items are. So that's what we are doing. We're starting that process today. We did receive our letter on November 4th. This year, they are requesting it back earlier than they have in the past. They did send us the letter earlier, to be fair, though. So we need to have that submitted to the ACHD by February 24th, 2021. After it goes through the Transportation Commission and this group finalizes it, we will take it to council. So this group will advise council on what order those priorities should be in, and then ultimately it's up to council to make that recommendation to ACHD and submit that request list. So the goal today is to start looking at the roadways and intersections projects, and in January to finalize both the roadway and intersection projects and the community programs projects. And then we will pass those on to city council. Does anybody have any questions about the process before I start jumping into the actual projects?
So, Ms. Carson, just to double check, and you've checked, but there is not a representative from ACHD to make any further introductory comments.
Not that I can see, Mr. Chair. I see someone on Zoom that I don't recognize the name, but they haven't spoken up, so I don't think that that person is Christy.
Miranda, this is Tony. I'm going to send her an email. She may join us if she gets it in time.
Okay. We'll be talking about this topic for the next 30 minutes or so, so she may have some more things to add. If there are no process questions, we can jump right into looking at the actual priorities. So in your packet, I did include the priorities that we had last year, and let me share my screen so those on Zoom can see it. So these priorities are listed, these projects are listed by the priority that was set by last year's Transportation Commission. So this commission can rearrange those as needed. We also have in the packet is a map that shows, sorry about that, we have a map in the packet that also shows specifically where the City of Meridian projects are, as well as ACHD has an integrated 5-year work plan interactive map that we can go to. So we have a few tools here as the Transportation Commission reviews, and I can share those however you need. So I will let that discussion start with you all.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hopkins.
Eagle Road, number 5, Eagle Road, Amity to Victories, bid and go into construction, so we can probably drop that down.
So you would take that out of the top 10?
Oh, yeah, I'd put it down. There's the dual lane roundabout, which is also part of that project, is 26. Those two have been bid. Central Paving's the general contractor, and they'll go to work here, like now.
So, number 5 and 26. So, Mr. Hopkins, help me out on the first 10, or Mr. Lancaster, maybe help me out on the points or how the scoring. The first 10 are weighted heavier than others?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the first 10 are weighted heavier than the others when ACHD looks at that. So we have our top 10 roadways and intersection projects, and our top 10 community programs projects will be weighted the heaviest.
Okay. So then, Mr. Hopkins, if
They could just go away. They're being built.
all right, so are you just, so does 11 now become 10 for you?
Yeah, for me, I liked the projects as they were said. I spent as much time, this packet was pretty big, so it was a lot to get through. But that's one that stood out really quick, and so I thought I'd take those two off. And I didn't see any glaring changes. I thought we did pretty good last year.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I would suggest that we add them maybe to the end of the list rather than take them off completely. Just because, I don't know, just in my experience, I prefer to wait until something is actually built before I take it off the list.
Okay, so,
But it is up to the commission.
so 5 would become 68 and 26 would become 69 if just by mathematically we're putting them to the end of the list. Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lewis.
just a question on process. I know in the rankings, the top 10 in each category get local points, 10, 9, 8, all the way down to 1, but then I think 11 through 15 get 1 point as well, don't they? At least that's how I remember it from last year. So the top 15 actually get some kind of credit.
Okay. Ms. Carson, do I bring any confusion in because we've had the transportation summit with the mayor, and does that thinking from that group, does that raise any questions about one of these projects that may deserve higher attention than what we've ranked here?
So I did ask the transportation work group. I spoke with Dave Miles and asked if we should bump those up based on that group. And he said that group is separate from the Transportation Commission's
Okay.
prioritization.
All right, I'll, thank you. I'll
I
muddy the waters.
have asked Parks what their preferences are, so I'll have that information for you in January.
Okay.
As well as I'll be meeting with the school district next week to see what projects hit high on their priorities. So I'll have the Parks and school district information for you in January.
Very good. Mr. Lewis,
Mr. Chairman,
leaned on you the last several years to scrub these with some detail, so I'm going to ask you to take another peek here.
well, as Mr. Hopkins said before, we have hammered this list repeatedly over the years. I haven't done a deep dive into it yet because I was going to ask at this meeting for a little more information. In past years, we've usually gotten the ACHD, a peak hour level of service map that has helped me to figure out what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And something new on the community programs projects. I know we're not talking about those in detail today, but ACHG has just finished the North Meridian Neighborhood Plan, and there are ranked projects in that. And there's also the Downtown Meridian Neighborhood Plan, which is kind of nearing, well, I don't know if it's nearing completion, but I think half or more of the projects are probably constructed in it. And I'd like to compare those two neighborhood plans and the projects that are in those with the listing of community programs projects. So those are my two requests before I can
Okay, so,
do a deep dive into this.
all right. So Commissioners, we have been talking about roads and intersections. Mr. Lewis, the two studies that you mentioned, does that bear on further analysis of roads and intersections?
The two neighborhood plans, no, those relate to the community programs projects.
All right, so,
But the level of service map would help me with the roads and intersections.
so before we turn our homework in on this project, which would be next month, you'd want to see those two maps?
Yes, please.
Okay. Other questions, commissioners, comments about the first section, roads and intersections? Okay. The next section I would look at then is the community programs.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Christy Inselman is now on with us on Zoom.
Okay. So, Ms. Inselman, do I have it correct?
That is correct. Can you hear me?
Okay. We got started. We understand scheduling and conflicts, but we'll back up a little bit.
Okay.
And Ms. Carson made some introductory comments about the ACHD plan. But we'll put the thunder stick back in your hands and ask you for your comments.
Sure. And I did, I apologize. I'm not on my computer, so it's a little off because the other meeting is actually still going and is holding up my computer. But I do have a PowerPoint presentation to just kind of walk you through the 5-year work plan process. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. When I came on, I just heard briefly that there was a request for a level of service map. More than happy to provide that to your staff. But if you'd like, I can go ahead and do that PowerPoint.
Please do.
Okay. Okay, can you guys see my slide?
Yes, thank you.
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, so just a quick introduction. So my name is Christy Inselman. I am a senior transportation planner with the Ada County Highway District, and I am tasked with processing the integrated 5-year work plan. So that's my role here. So just, I'm sure you guys know, but quick overview, what is the 5-year work plan? The plan integrates the building, maintenance, and operation of the road systems in one place. It implements our long-range plans and reports in that implementation effort. It also informs our future capital budgets, and it creates transparency of our planned activities. And we do coordinate this internally with our partner agencies, which would be the City of Meridian. So we did send kickoff letters to our partner agencies November 2nd this year. So our plan was to start this process earlier so that we could give our partner agencies more time to review and provide their prioritization lists. So we sent the agency letters a little over a month earlier than we have in the past. We are requesting that the prioritization lists are submitted to us by February 24th, which is like a week or two earlier than last year. Overall, it's about a 4-month time frame that we've allotted for our partner agencies to provide their lists. And staff is also available to meet and answer any questions that you have. So last year, the City of Meridian, with their prioritization list, they had 69 road and intersection requests, and they had 43 community programs requests. Of course, there's no limit on what you can submit. And I believe briefly there was a comment about like the top 15 getting points in our prioritization list. Actually, any project that is on your list gets points. Just how high it falls within that list is when the points become elevated. So last year we provided staff with our prioritization tool. Because we have come to very much love GIS here at ACHD because it's a great visual representation of what's occurring within the county. So with this list, we have quite a few things that were provided in a GIS format. And this is a fully interactive program, meaning you can zoom in and out on a project to get more information. So the information that's provided, the first tab is the adopted 21-25 5-year work plan. And then the next two tabs are requests from all of our partner agencies. And those include the 6 cities, the county, all school districts, and we recently added Boise State University as another partner agency to provide prioritization lists to us. So we wanted to make sure that all of our agencies saw not only what they were requesting, but also our other partner agencies were requesting. And part of the impetus behind that is sometimes projects will come up on the radar for a school district that maybe the city is not seeing. And when we receive a project request from both one of our partner agencies, in this case the city, or and the school district, that also helps elevate it when we go through our prioritization process. So what we've provided here is those requests. We've also provided a map for the planned arterial network, which is tied to our master street map. The currently adopted neighborhood plans, and this will also include the North Meridian that was adopted this last year. So it'll show every project in that plan. It's also the planned pedestrian network, our bike network, which is tied directly to our bike master plan, as well as a low stress bike network. And so all of those are available, and almost every one of these we also have, so like the neighborhood plan tab also has a direct link to every single neighborhood plan that has been adopted to date. So you could go to the full document if you want. You know, the planned arterial, it has links to the master street map and the livable streets design guide and whatnot. So we have a lot of information here that we wanted to get to our partner agencies so that they had all of our information as well to help inform their decisions. So when it comes to prioritization, what do we look at? So it's going to be different with our prioritization criteria. It's going to be different for a road or intersection project as it would be for a community programs project. So with a community programs project, it gets higher points if it's a safe routes to school, if it gets additional points if it's missing a pedestrian facility like sidewalk or ped ramps, whereas an intersection, it looks, or a roadway, we look at speeds, we look at the number of cars, we look at some accident information on that, and if the improvement is going to provide congestion relief. So there's a lot of different factors that go into our prioritization. So for example, just to go in a little further, so we do look at, is this item listed in a neighborhood plan? Is it a part of a low stress bikeway network? Is the partner agency providing additional funding for the program? Because then that can also help elevate it. So these are some of the things that we look at. And partner agency support, as you can see, is at the top of the list because that does play heavily into our decision making. And also, if you look at the prioritization list that we send back to staff every year, you can see the higher up a project is, those are the ones that are making it into the plan sooner rather than later. So once we have, and part of the reason we also moved the kickoff to our partner agencies was to not only get you guys a longer time period to provide your list, but so that we also get these lists earlier, so that we can start that prioritization process, because it does take time. Last year we had, between all of our partner agencies, we had 575 requests. And that takes a little time to prioritize, and we have to redo that every year because obviously things change. So ranked projects, we evaluate the overall points. So what the type of facility that is being requested, what the agency ranking is, available funding, and then project costs. And when we prioritize a project, we then identify those that we also need to have scoped. So a project can't make it into the 5-year work plan until we know how much it's going to cost. So on the surface, we could look at it and say, oh, a ped crossing, you know, that's a $75,000 project. We can throw that in there very quickly. But once we actually go out and evaluate the site, we realize we can't just do the crossing. It also means ped ramp updates. It also means there's some drainage issues that we have to address. So there's other components that a lot of times can elevate the cost of a project. So before we will put a project into the 5-year work plan, we evaluate, or we have them scoped. So every year we scope approximately 40 to 50 projects because it's not just one person going out there and looking at it. We have our bridges and our traffic and our planning staff and our, you know, construction side and our inspectors. So we do have a lot of people that go out and evaluate the site to determine what it would take to actually build that project. And it's at project scoping that we get cost estimates and whether that project is actually viable. Because sometimes we do get requests where the project isn't, we aren't able to take that forward because topography, or there's a lot of other issues that may come into play. And then the last step is inclusion in the 5-year work plan. So prioritization is just one portion of the programming process. And so once we have the requests, once we've done some scoping, we come up with our initial draft for the 5-year work plan. And that is sent out to our partner agencies in July. And generally we do that around the same time that we have our second open house. Our first open house will be in February. And that's to just get some initial input from the public on projects they would like to see, and also to get those lists from our partner agencies. And then there's a second comment period. So you guys are able to provide those lists, and from November to February, you'll provide your initial list. And then once we come out with the draft plan, it's another opportunity for our partner agencies to review the plan, provide comments back. Are we adding the right projects? Are we not adding the right projects? Would you like to see one elevated and one decreased? Those kinds of things. So it's another opportunity for our partner agencies. So these are just examples of some of the projects that were in the 21-25. I just cut some pages. There's like 40 some odd pages of our projects. So it's fun. And this is just an overview of the process. So our 5-year work plan update, we update the 5-year work plan every single year. Our fiscal years run October 1st through September 30th. So we've already started the new process for the 22-26. And it's important to note that the first 2 years of the integrated 5-year work plan are tied directly to our budget. So throughout the process, there will be joint meetings for the 5-year work plan and the budget. And then budget adoption is generally 1 month prior to the adoption of the 5-year work plan, because we can't take the 5-year work plan forward until we know what funding we have available. So obviously, you know, if like this last year with being hard hit with the pandemic, the commission didn't take the 3% or the new growth. So that affected obviously the bottom line on what projects we could program. But we had some increases in a few other areas, which were very helpful. Oops, excuse me, 1 second. So this is just a brief overview. So we sent the kickoff letters in November, as I said. The project deadline is February 24th. We anticipate on holding our first open house on February 18th. The second one will be in July, and we'll determine that date as we get closer in on that process. We anticipate the public review period of the initial draft to be between July 14th and August 20th, with our budget adoption August 25th and the adoption of the 5-year work plan on September 22nd. So these are just some key dates. So when we send our kickoff letters to all of our partner agencies, we provide a copy of their agency request list from last year, as well as some agency responses as to where we are at within that process. If it's something our traffic needs to go back out and look at, we usually identify that. If it's one that we've scoped and we're just waiting for inclusion in the 5-year work plan, meaning funding, we do that as well. And so we send out those lists, we send out the letter, and then we send out a list of key dates of upcoming important dates for the 5-year work plan. And these are just a few in the next upcoming months. And yes, staff had said in the past we had provided the level of service map, and we hadn't done this then. That was the last two because most of the agencies didn't care to have it. So we're more than happy to provide that information or any additional information that you guys would like to have that would help you with your prioritization requests and evaluating those. And so with that, I will end my presentation, and I will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, questions for Ms. Inselman?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lancaster?
so Christie, this seems to come up every year, but some projects are built, and so they fall off the list. There's a number of them, particularly at the top of the list, that do have a design year, do have a right-of-way year, and do have a construction year. So my question for you is, once they have a date in each of those boxes, are they moving forward regardless of our ranking? And can some of them start to fall off of our list?
Thank you, Commissioner Lancaster. Sorry, I need to learn all of your names, don't I? So yes and no. So as I had talked about earlier, the first 2 years are tied directly to our budget, and those are the 2 years that we definitely have funding for particular projects. So if it's got design in 21 and right of way in 22, then those are funded. The construction won't be funded until we update it and get it into a funding year. Now, having said that, I have talked to several of our partner agencies last year, spent some time with all of them about potentially amending their prioritization lists, because once a project has been added into the 5-year work plan and we have design, construction, and right of way, a lot of times they end up taking the top 10, 15 spots on a list, and we're not getting a really good sense of your next priorities. So several of our jurisdictions have now created like a subcategory within each one. So the roads and intersections, they would take all of the projects that are currently programmed in the 5-year work plan, keep them ranked and separate them. And then all of the projects that are currently not programmed in the 5-year work plan, re-rank them 1 through however many. And that helps give us a better sense. And when we're prioritizing projects, we get a better sense of what's the next important project, the most important project for Meridian. So if that would be a valuable way for you, we don't want to see them drop off the list until they are completed. But if it's a valuable way for you to maybe reprioritize your list, we're more than happy to receive them that way. And if there's another way that makes more sense for the city of Meridian to share their requests, we're open to that as well. We've had other agencies ask to prioritize them based on neighborhood planning area or something to that effect. And I'm happy to work with staff on the best way to tell your story.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Ms. Henselman? Ms. Henselman, David Ballard, just to follow up, and I'm not trying to commit you or paint you into a corner, but you said a yes/no answer. Hypothetically, so if you've completed design year and right-of-way year, but what's left is construction year, are there factors generally, and I'm not asking for you to make a commitment, are there other factors that would delay that construction year that maybe we should keep in the back of our mind when we review these lists? Or, as you say, if there's another subset making that assumption, what would cause that to stall, if I can use that verb?
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Ballard, what could cause that to stall? Funding. That's always an issue, right? It's always, we need more money to get things done. So if, like this year, we didn't take the 3% in new construction, so we had to reprioritize some projects and kick some out. And generally, if we're that far along where we have design and we have right of way and construction is only year 3 or year 4, those are going to stay. It just may not advance. So if, like this year, if it's, in year 3, so if it's in year 2023 to be constructed, and next year the commission decides to not take 3% and not take construction again, that's obviously going to affect our bottom line on what we can get constructed in a particular year. So then we have to look at our project. So there's a potential that project that was planned to be constructed in 23 may be pushed out till 24, and then reevaluated the next year to see if we can move it up again. It's all, until it is in a funded year, there's really not a guarantee.
Very good.
Of that construction year until we can get it in there. I hope, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Other questions for Ms. Henselman, commissioners? And the ex-official members too. I didn't want to exclude you from asking Ms. Henselman questions.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question, if this is a good time. So Christie, this is a question that I seem to forget the answer to every year as well, but on some of the community programs, the listed projects, they read more like roadway projects. For instance, number 2 on the list, on the Meridian list, says reconstruct Stoddard Road between Victory Road and Overland Road to 3 lanes, 7-foot attached sidewalks and bike lanes. Project includes bridge, and then it goes on and on. So, that really sounds more like a roadway project than a community programs project. So why are some of these in the community programs?
That is a great question. Was that Commissioner Lewis?
Lancaster again.
Lancaster. Okay, sorry. Yes, so the reason why some of those projects, it depends on the road typology. So in our capital, our capital improvement projects, those are arterial roadways that we can utilize impact fee funds to widen and make improvements. Stoddard Road is classified as a collector roadway. So that one is not eligible for impact fees. So it has to be under our community programs funds. So any improvements to that roadway wholly will come from either our general funds, or if there's VRF funds available for components of that. That's why they're put in different categories. So if it's a roadway that's classified as arterial, that can be under the roads and intersections, because it's most times they're at least partially impact fee eligible. But if it's a collector or a local roadway, those would go under community program projects.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Just doing a time check, commissioners, we're 35 minutes into this presentation and discussion. Not cutting you off, Ms. Henselin, any follow-up there from you?
Thank you, commissioners, for having me in today. Apologize for the rushed presentation, but sometimes overlapping happens. No, I don't have anything further. If there's any other information, I don't know what else I missed, any information besides a level of service map that would be beneficial to this group, please let me know, and I'd be happy to provide that.
And Ms. Henselin, and has been our custom over the last several years, you're welcome to come back and visit with us another day. So we'd look forward to another presentation if that comes to pass. Commissioners, so do we want to take up very briefly a couple of minutes? We've got Mr. Lewis's request to see a couple of maps before we continue to the discussion next month. But having said that, do we want to get any comments put forth for our thinking on community programs and the priorities there?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
in community programs, number 39, there's a project that's listed as completed.
39, Locust Grove, Paradise, Goddard, or Grand?
Yeah. Is that the one that's been there the past couple of years, and there's been some discussion on whether or not it really is completed? You know what I mean? And I think that might have been Commissioner Leslie's project that he kept telling us it wasn't done. But I'm not sure.
Okay. Ms. Carson, point us in a direction, if we can, as to how we might check out if that 39 should be taken off the list, noted as completed, or is there a remaining issue?
Mr. Chair, I will pull that up right now. I believe this is the one. Yeah, this is the one that the request was for sidewalks, largely because the students going to Discovery Elementary, coming from these northern neighborhoods, don't have sidewalks to connect to their school. They currently use a farmer's field to get to the school. The farmer opens the gate in the morning and closes the gate at the end of the day for the kids to pass. rather than students using sidewalks. So the extruded curb was made for students to use the asphalt path along the street. It's not something that elementary age kids are comfortable using. It's not something their parents are comfortable using. So I believe that's why it's still on the list.
Do we need to make, is there plans to convert the asphalt to concrete sidewalks? Or do we need to make a note why we want to keep that on the list?
My recollection was that the extruded curb was meant to be a temporary fix. The fact that it's listed here as complete makes me think that perhaps that changed, and now that's the permanent fix that they're going to go with.
Okay. When we get back the maps for January, we might take this up again. Okay, commissioners.
I can address that quickly if you would
Yes.
like, since I'm still on here. So looking at the list that was provided under the agency request for that one, it still says asphalt path on the east side. So if you guys are wanting curb gutter and sidewalk, I would probably just delete that one, maybe create a new one and specify that you want curb gutter and sidewalk either on one side or the other. And then that would get rid of the comments that say complete, because we consider this complete because we did put asphalt pathway on there. I hope that clarifies.
Very good. Mr. Lewis, we want to think about some language then to take up the comment there, to make a request that 39 be revised, or if we're thinking that we would like to see concrete sidewalks there.
I think I'd like to think about that a little, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, let's leave that for the January discussion then. Well, as commissioners, anything else before we move on? And we'll pick this up in January with the intention to complete our prioritizations so that we can get it to city council, so they would have roughly 2-3 sessions to take up those prioritizations.
Mr. Chairman,
Lancaster.
I think all of that sounds fine. I guess I will make one request of Miranda and Caleb and city staff. So in the past, and Caleb has been good about bringing new projects to the list, if you will. I think that would be helpful, you know, where staff has perhaps been part of conversations where projects or ideas are suggested. Sometimes those new projects are ranked fairly high. Sometimes they're just at the bottom of the list, but I think it would be helpful to add some new ones to continue to move through the list.
So your wish list, or your list, or your Christmas list then, no pun intended, well, I guess it is intended. You'd like some new, more projects to consider.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, which projects or ideas have come up in the last year, you know, through the planning department that may be of value to the list?
I'm thinking that Ms. Carson will be able to put something together for our consideration in January.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll also note that if any commissioners have comments that they'd like to send me, I can compile those as well for the January meeting.
Okay. Looking at the list then, for the time being, are we good to close item 5 to be picked up in January for further discussion? Okay. Item 6, new business staff communications.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so as you're flipping through the staff communications, you'll notice this is the largest section. This was a very large month for staff communications. So I'm not going to go over every single one. I'll review a few, and then if there are any questions about the others, feel free to ask those. So the first one I want to touch on is on page 28. Just noting that ACHD is starting a South Meridian neighborhood plan. So similar to how they've done we've had the downtown Meridian Plan, and we've had the North Meridian Neighborhood Plan. Now we're having a South Meridian Neighborhood Plan, and we have been invited to participate in that, and the kickoff is coming up next week. You'll notice also that that joint letter that I mentioned in the project update is the next item there on the staff communications. The next item to highlight, I'm going to let Caleb take the mic on this one. It's on page 31. There was some concern of a lack of a deceleration lane westbound Chinden at Black Cat. So Caleb, if you're still on, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm starting to get, thank you, Mr. Chair, Miranda. So in the pack, you have a correspondence. I actually haven't been out there, but I did have conversations with a gentleman who is trying to turn northbound onto Black Cat from westbound Chinden. I've been in communications with ITD staff, the mayor's office staff. We're trying to figure out what can be done to rectify the situation. I don't know what the turning movement numbers are right now, so there's not necessarily warrants today for a dedicated right turn lane, but maybe even a shoulder or something where somebody can pull off a little bit out of the through travel lane on 2026 to get on to Black Cat. So it's more to make you aware. I don't know that this will actually elevate to a future meeting topic. We're trying to just problem solve it at the staff level and see if there's some resources that can just move some of those poles back a little bit. So again, we can get a shoulder and maybe allow someone to get out of the travel lane more safely anyways onto Black Cat Road. So if you have a silver bullet or any ideas, I'm certainly open to them because I'm not quite sure what can be done without, again, moving couple signal arms back over and scabbing on some more asphalt. So yeah, just a little more context for that. That one certainly hasn't been solved yet, and we're trying to right now.
Mr. Steed, have you taken a look at that intersection there? And as well as commissioners, other commissioners, if you have any comments or familiar, if you drive that area.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question for Caleb, if I could.
Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Mr.
So-
Lewis.
So the brand new traffic signal that was just built at that intersection, are you saying that there wasn't allowance made for rather when the signal poles were placed, there wasn't an allowance made for a future right turn lane?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lewis, that's correct. So when that intersection gets rebuilt on the north side, basically, either through development or ITD, when they come and add the 2 additional travel lanes on the north side of that corridor, that intersection will have to be rebuilt. And so even both in the interim condition and the ultimate condition, those poles will have to be moved.
Mr. Lewis, is that a project we want to add? Mr. Lancaster, is that one of the projects that you might want to add to the list?
Mr. Chairman, I would say no, because it's a state highway, not a ACHD facility, so it wouldn't do any good to add to the ACHD project list.
That's a turn lane from Chinden onto Black Cat. Okay, thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I do have another question on that. So in the staff report, it talks a lot about how the development is recommended to contribute toward the future right turn lane. I guess the question I've got is, was that done? And is ACHD or the city holding some funds in escrow for that? Or what's the situation there?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lewis. So to my knowledge, at least a couple weeks ago, that fee, we're at $50,000, right? I think was their proportionate share of that. It wasn't paid as of a few weeks ago when I looked into it. even if it were, though, that's for the ultimate, that's just a pot that goes into really save it doesn't correct the existing deficiency, if you will. So that development was just recently approved within the last few months. So again, that doesn't really help us between now and when the north side of 2026 gets widened. That money will just be used for when the north side of 2026 gets widened. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Other discussions of or comments, questions for Mr. Hood on the deacceleration lane or the absence of a deacceleration lane, page 31.
This is Justin. I believe there was another development application that came in, I believe just yesterday, or maybe even this morning. So I don't know, Caleb, if you've seen that one yet, but there may be some ability there for Meridian to get some funds. I mean, proportionate share is kind of a big topic, and I know that Caleb's been in the midst of talking about it with Jamie Kuntz from District 3. So there may be some other possibilities for that right turn lane. There may be room for discussion at a later time.
Okay, so Mr. Hood, I take
Mr. Chair, can I just follow up real quick on that?
Yes, please.
So there really are kind of two different related issues, but different topics. One is that proportionate share and basically ensuring that ITD's conditions of approval for any one project get complied with. So we're trying to work through that to make sure that, to Mr. Lewis's question, that has the $50-some thousand been paid? We don't have, as a city, we don't currently, we don't enforce ITD or any other agency's conditions for that matter. So we're trying to work through ITD and getting them a stick, if you will. What happens if somebody doesn't comply with ITD's comments or conditions or proportionate share? Unlike ACHD, they aren't signatories on a plat. So they really don't have much authority to require a lot of these things. So we're trying to figure out, okay, you've done all this analysis, you've required all these things. How do we actually get the developer to comply with those? So that's one issue. And then this westbound, what those impacts that are happening right now with a project, how do we ensure that the right now mitigation occurs? If a decel lane needs to go in, how do we make sure that happens and is inspected and is signed off? So again, very related, but we're trying to work through some of those issues to make sure we don't miss ITD and some of the things they're saying our community needs to mitigate the impacts of a project. But we do have meetings. I'm working with Jamie to schedule another follow-up meeting on this topic. Like I said, I'm not sure how much of this you all will need to be involved, but I'll certainly keep you updated.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Ms. Carson, other items on staff communications?
Sorry about that, I muted my mic. Yes, Mr. Chair. So the next item I was going to highlight was on page 57. I mentioned it briefly during the project's update. The Eagle Road, Lake Hazel to Amity draft scope of work is there in the packet. The ACHD does intend to have a kickoff meeting for this project in mid-January, looking at the intersection. This project does include the intersection of Taconic and Eagle, which the school zone subcommittee did look at this past month, but as a whole, we've not looked at as a commission. Hopefully, after Mr. Lancaster's presentation today, we'll have some more ideas on how to proceed with the intersection, be it a roundabout or a signal. So this item would be brought back to the commission in January or February to review and discuss treatments there at Taconic and Eagle. The idea would be that we would vet the design through this group and then advise council on how to weigh in with ACHD if we have any concerns with their design.
Questions for Ms. Carson on that project or segment of staff communications?
Okay, I have one more item for staff communications I was going to highlight. On page 99, I just wanted to let you know that there is a report. It's the last staff communications item. The Looking Glass Academy did a 2-day walking audit training in June 2020 here at City Hall. So the last item there in the staff communications packet is just a report of what they found during that, just an evaluation of the walkability in the city of Meridian, or downtown Meridian. And that is all I have on staff communications.
Any follow-up for Ms. Carson?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple going back. So back to page 23, new hawk signal on Cherry Lane by the library. I see the city attorney was upset by visibility here. I'm curious what resolution, if anything, there is to that.
So, Mr. Chair, the concern there was that the plastic bollards for construction were removed before the reflective material had been put in. So the city attorney came forward as a citizen with a concern. So we addressed it the same way that we would any citizen with a concern. We reached out to ACHD. They have since put the construction bollards back. They let us know that the project is not complete yet, but when it is complete, it will include lighting and reflective material.
Okay. Thank you. And then, Mr. Chairman, a second one, and this is at the top of page 26.
Yes.
So this one I think is just interesting follow-up. This has been floating around for a couple months. So this is definition of controlled access highway. So this is relevant to the ATV on city streets ordinance discussion, right? So am I reading it correctly? The highlighted part says it's not a controlled access highway unless ACHD designates it as such. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Well, Mr. Lancaster, I'm glad you brought that up because I was reading that and I was trying to understand, how do I say this? Does the response answer the question that Mr. Leclerc's group, do I have this right, Tom? You're the ATV group? So weren't you asking what is the definition of controlled access?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm reading that, and I'm just reading it, and I'm saying, does it answer the question other than what Mr. Lancaster just said? It is an arterial or collector if it's been so designated, or a controlled access? Mr. Baird, is it fair to ask to share any thoughts there, or do I have to respect some turf?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. This question has been a topic of debate. I have not been directly involved with the subcommittee. Emily Kane of my office has been intimately involved. What I would like to do is confer with her, and we can report back next week. It seems like it should be a simple question, but it's not. So, and that's certainly why Mr. Leclerc is asking it. So, if you give us the month to take take a close look at it, and I'll chat with Emily and we'll talk about it on the next agenda.
Because I understand the
Mr. Chairman,
concept.
this is Walter.
Yes, Mr. Steed.
Emily talked about this at the subcommittee meeting this afternoon. I had talked to her by phone the latter part of last week. She had indicated that she also was a little puzzled by the email. But since has talked to them and said today, and Tom, you can make sure I get it right, that ACHD considers arterials and collectors to be controlled access, and that local streets are not.
Okay, so Mr. Steed,
Right. And how that impacts our work on a ATV, UTV ordinance will be coming up in my report later. Or I could give it now. Anyway.
visualize this. But then when you say local streets, that's kind of like what's in front of my house on a subdivision. So all I'm looking for is maybe, and Mr. Leclerc, I'm not trying to overthink or steal your thunder, maybe that's something that you work on in your committee and you give us I was going to say a better answer, but maybe that's not the right adjective, and Mr. Baird says he may shine some light on that. So let's leave it at that and wait to hear your report.
Okay.
Mr. Lancaster, does that, or did I just muddy the waters?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's fine. Let's hear what Mr. Leclerc has to say, Commissioner Leclerc has to say, and I'll ask some follow-up then if I am still have questions. Yeah, still befuddled.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Baird. Any other items or questions for staff communications? Okay. We'll close item 6 for today. Item 7, Ordinance and Development Subcommittee update.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So we got this answer on the that you saw in the packet, and Emily got further confirmation, as Commissioner Steed mentioned, that ACHD sees basically everything they can control is a controlled access. So but that whole discussion, it's interesting, and we need to know more about it. But I think we got enough information in our subcommittee to move forward on an ordinance governing local streets. And local streets are everything else, basically, the city governs. Everything that's a controlled access roadway, ATVs and UTVs are banned according to state law as we understand it. So what we want to do is write basically just a city ordinance that clarifies that we're going to have consistent policy with state law and have an ordinance that says these vehicles will be banned for the most part from local streets. And Emily, we consulted with her. She seems confident she can get us a draft proposal for the commission to review and for our committee to review at the January 4 meetings. And so that's the progress we made today. And we're on our way to have a report for you with a draft ordinance at our next meeting.
Any follow-up for Mr. Leclerc? And again, we had outlined a protocol of brief report without detail until the subcommittee is ready to present their report. Having said that, I may violate my own rule. Mr. Leclerc,
Great.
is there going to be an index or some kind of, an index to say these are local streets and these are controlled access streets? I think part of that conversation is if the ordinance is vague, defense lawyer gets you out of the citation.
Well,
Go ahead.
how would we do that? I don't expect a detailed index street by street for the whole city to be in this ordinance. It's just going to leave to police officer discretion, that this type of vehicle is not supposed to be on any street in Meridian, basically. They don't have the seat belts and lights and safety features that a regular vehicle has. And so we're going to we're just going to say any street that is a city street, a local street, will comply with state policy on this issue. I think we're going to wrap it together with the golf course ordinance, but the exceptions for golf course vehicles will not apply to these ATUTV vehicles. And so that's some more detail on what our proposal will be. No, it will not have a street by street index. We think that the officers know the streets, and they don't need to know. I mean, there are some collector streets that have 25-mile-an-hour speed limits that seem like local streets, but we know which streets in our police officers know what is considered a collector street and what isn't, and where how to, with this ordinance, we hope to clarify for them that they have the authority to cite someone, whether it's under state law or city ordinance. So it'll be a consistent situation for the police officers on the ground. That's our goal.
Stay still, were you raising your hand?
Yes, sir, I was. Compass does have, and some of our, I think ACHD would also have a functional classification map that does outline what is a local street, what is a collector, what is an arterial. So those are mapped out.
Yeah, that's probably cool.
Okay, I appreciate that. Was there another question?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Baird.
since those classifications exist, I imagine that the ordinance will just incorporate them by reference because they're going to change over time. And then your concern about, what if the officer cites it under the local ordinance, but it's actually an arterial or a collector and it should have been under the state law. If somebody takes it all the way to court, the prosecutor can amend that at the last moment. It sounds like Emily's given good advice about how to plug this gap, and if she's able to meet the timeline that she's promised, you'll see that draft in your packet, and we can probably dig into it a little bit deeper next month.
I wasn't trying to get ahead, Mr. Baird.
No, that's fine. I'm great. I'm glad that the initial question has been adequately answered. The scheme that both Mr. Steed and Mr. Leclerc have explained makes total sense, and it sounds like they're proceeding appropriately.
What made me think of that is late last night or evening, we were out driving the road to the prison there. And
Yeah.
here's a little buggy, and I'm assuming it's a farmer, a rancher checking on his field, and it's all fine and good, the traffic's not heavy, but I'm asking, okay, is that a vehicle that can properly be on that road? And I'm not trying to interfere with him getting his ranching or his farming done. So, any event, Mr. Leclerc, we look forward to that. I apologize if I got ahead of myself.
Oh, great.
Okay, any follow-up or other questions for Mr. Leclerc? And thanks, Ms. Tisdale, for joining in. Item 8, Mr. Lancaster, front and center, sir, roundabouts and alternative intersections.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is my turn. So I've been waiting all meeting for this. So at the November meeting, we had a discussion about some educational materials for the commission and hopefully for council after this. And so I have prepared some remarks. I think most of you know my background, but I am by training and profession a traffic engineer. I'm employed as such. My participation on the commission is not representing anybody other than Ryan Lancaster, citizen commissioner, though. But I like to bring my background to the job. So with that said, I've got some information here about alternate intersections to start with, and then to talk more in depth about roundabouts. So this first slide, well, all of these blue slides I borrowed from Jeff Shaw of the Federal Highway Administration. And so I'm not going to cover everything on them, but we're going to go through these first blue slides pretty fast. So,
Got a little copyright check mark, do you there?
yeah, something like that. So got to make sure I'm okay with the lawyers.
Fair use, educational material.
Yeah, educational materials, yep. So why do we have these alternate intersections at all? So looking at this, so about half of all severe crashes happen at intersections or near intersections. And specifically, left turns at intersections are a problem. And so all of these alternative intersections that we're going to look at, they all address left turns. That's the primary thing that they do. So there's some safety, mobility, and value benefits here. So value being you can treat traffic in a way that's different than, say, a grade separation, a bridge, an interchange. You can get some operational and safety benefits without doing those things. And so here's 4 different alternative intersections that we're going to talk about briefly today. Roundabouts we're going to talk about in depth, but there's also restricted crossing U-turn intersections, median U-turns. So both of those are similar in that they are U-turn intersections, and then displaced left at the bottom right. You may have heard it called the continuous flow intersection, but I like the real name, the displaced left. It describes what it is better. So we're going to talk about these 4 briefly, or 3 briefly, and then talk about roundabouts. So another reason why we do this is so that we don't end up with gigantic, quote, conventional intersections. So this is an aerial photo of State Highway 55, also known as Eagle Road and Fairview Avenue. I think we're all familiar with this. This intersection is gigantic. So I went back a little bit from the intersection, but counting, on Fairview, there's up to 10 lanes plus bike lanes on Fairview. At the intersection, there's only 9 lanes plus bike lanes. On Eagle Road, there's 9 lanes or 8 right at the intersection. This is huge, right? This is a sea of asphalt. You don't improve operations by just making it bigger. Eventually, there's a turning point where operations start to get worse because it's so big. And then when we talk about other users, pedestrians, bicycles, this isn't great, right? So this is why we do some of these other things. So they all have some commonality here. I'm only going to talk about the first two on this list. Again, these aren't my slides. So all of these alternative intersections, they change how we treat left turns. And then there's so often there's fewer or less severe conflict points. So again, left turns are a problem, right? So if we do something different with the left turns, we get both operational and crash improvements. All right, so roundabouts, just briefly, we're going to talk about this in depth. So the only things I want to mention here are the bottom two bullet points that roundabouts can be used in low speed conditions, high speed conditions, urban, rural, it doesn't matter. A few years ago, I was driving through the desert of Arizona, and out in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of the desert, there's a roundabout. Okay, so these can be used in any setting, not just a low speed urban environment. And then the last bullet can be used both in a corridor, so a series of roundabouts, or as spot improvements.
Mr. Lancaster,
Yes, sir.
out there in Arizona, was that two roads crossing, or did they just put it there to wake you up?
Yeah, good question. So there were two rural highways that intersected. I think one had a county road was the cross street, but it was a highway and a county road.
Probably makes sense to break up the monotony.
It could be, yeah. Okay, so U-turn intersections, there's kind of three flavors here, but they're all similar. On the left, there's restricted crossing U-turn, and there's a couple sub-variations of this. Basically, if the U-turns are not signalized, it's called a J-turn, and if they are signalized, it's a super street. The difference well, I'll come back to this. So median U-turn and through turn on the far right, these are basically the same. So the left turning movements are moved away from the intersection. They're moved further out to where a driver makes a U-turn. So instead of making a left turn at an intersection, they make a right turn and then a U-turn. So this moves the left turns away from the intersection. The only difference between the median U-turn and the through turn is the width of the median. The median U-turn has a wider median. So going back to our cut on the left, so what makes it different than the other two? It still has the U-turn for the minor street, the cross street, but the major street can make a left turn from the major street to the minor street. So that's the difference. So the R cut, you could also think of it as right in, right out, left in from the major street. So I'm going to go through these fairly fast so that we can get to the roundabouts. But I did want to point out that the Ada County Highway District has built from the previous page, you'd call it a through turn. I couldn't really show this very well, but I put a couple blue arrows at the top left and the bottom right, and so this is where the U-turn happens. So on this intersection, so State Street is the road that runs from the top left to the bottom right. Veterans Memorial Parkway is at the bottom left, and it's, I think, 36th Street at the top right, but you cannot make a left turn from State Street to Veterans Memorial Parkway. So instead, the driver goes through the intersection, makes a U-turn. So if the driver's traveling from the bottom right to the top left, or I'm sorry, from the bottom right, and they want to make a left turn onto Veterans Memorial Parkway to the bottom left, They first travel from the bottom right to the top left, make a U-turn, and then make a right turn onto Veterans Memorial Parkway. So that's how it works.
Mr. Lancaster,
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
if you'll go back a slide.
I'll be happy to.
So if I'm a semi going westbound on State Street, but I want to go left onto Veterans Parkway or Veterans Memorial Parkway, I've yet to figure out if there's enough room to U-turn a semi to get to a right-hand turn onto Veterans Memorial Parkway.
Yeah, so a good question. So the arrows on this slide are pointing to a bump in the side of the road, or called a loon. I'm going to go back one more. It shows it a little better on this far right picture. But that bump, that loon, is added for that turning radius.
Okay.
So I don't know what ACHD used for their design vehicle here. I don't know offhand. If Sean were here, he could tell us. But that is taken into consideration. So most vehicles don't need to use that bump. That's more for the larger vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I mentioned how many times there's fewer conflicts. So this is just a comparison of conflicts. So the left column, conventional signalized four-leg intersection, there's 32 conflicts. Whereas the median U-turn and the R-cut both have about half of that. So fewer conflicts means fewer chances for vehicles to run into each other. That's the short version. So fewer conflicts is good. I threw this in, or I kept this in, just briefly, talking about other users. So this is an example of a crosswalk through a restricted crossing U-turn intersection. Because the intersection's different, other road users have to be treated differently. And so, here the crosswalk kind of goes diagonal across the intersection. So I just threw this in as a quick example. All right, now to my favorite out of these three, the displaced left turn. So at a conventional intersection, at least in countries that drive on the right side of the road, left turns are the most difficult to make, right? So through movements are easy, right turns are easy. Left turns are difficult for drivers and also cause operational issues for the intersection. So what the displaced left turn intersection does, and let's look at this from left to right. So a vehicle wanting to travel from left to right and then turn north, we'll call north the top of this, the left turning vehicle actually crosses over to the other side of the road prior to the intersection. And then that vehicle makes their left turn more like how we make right turns. So it just crosses to the north. And this can happen while the vehicle's going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen can go. Okay, so all of the vehicles can go at the same time rather than left turning vehicles going first and then through through trips like we typically see at a quote conventional intersection, a conventional signal. So what's marked here as the crossover intersection, this is typically signalized, or it is signalized, and then there's a signal at the main intersection. So this is a 3-signal system. You can also have the displaced lefts on the, we'll call it the top and bottom legs of the intersection, and so then there'd be 5 signals. But again, it treats the left turns differently. It moves the left turns out of the intersection, pulls them to the far side of the road prior to the intersection. So you can see, if you look at the blue now, going from right to left, so the red left turns actually move outside of the blue vehicles moving through. So the Idaho Transportation Department is going to build one of these intersections at the intersection of Eagle and Highway 44 or State Street. I guess it's Highway 44 there. But so in Eagle, ITD is going to build one of these next year.
Mr. Lancaster,
Mr. Chairman?
I take it that there needs to be significant signage prior to that crossover to alert you that make a left turn here because you're not going to be able to make it at the light at the intersection.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. So in the instance that will be built here in Eagle, there will be overhead guide signs prior to the crossover for just that reason, saying get in this lane if you want to turn left.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Hopkins.
So, Mr. Lancaster, so are you you're just sent, so what makes the left-hand turn crossing in front of cars that's signalized better there than it is on the main intersection?
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner Hopkins. So again, it just is a different treatment for the left turns. It pulls the left turns out of the intersection. So the crossing happens away from the intersection where there's fewer conflicts than there are right in the intersection proper. So it improves operations. You know, it again kind of separates those conflicts so that they happen in different places than all right in the junction of the two roads.
Mr. Lancaster, I'm looking at the clock, your roundabout. Is that going to take more than 5 minutes? If so, we'll get you an extension.
It'll take a few more minutes than 5 minutes, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lewis, you have a motion to give him a couple more minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we extend the meeting to 5:40 PM.
Your a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Lancaster, you got 14 minutes.
All right, I'll get on my horse. So again, you have to treat bikes, pedestrians different at different intersections. Utah built a whole bunch of these displaced left intersections. Interestingly, they're now replacing some of them with interchanges, so grade separation, but they built a whole bunch of them, all the green dots on the right side.
Statistics why they changed over?
Yeah, they got more money and they could build an interchange.
Well, that was a poor question. Was there? I don't want to say a design flaw, but did they rethink it? Going, we built a better mousetrap, but yet we can build yet a better mousetrap.
I think there was part of that, Mr. Chairman. Just that there's some improvement with the displaced left, and even more with an interchange.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, they kept growing, had more vehicles. Okay, we're going to do this as fast as we can.
13 minutes.
13 minutes, roundabouts. So this particular roundabout in this picture, Commissioner Lewis and I worked on together. Okay, modern roundabouts. So what makes a modern roundabout? So these are unlike intersections in the east that were very large, had control in the circulating roadway. So a modern roundabout has some aspects as far as there's splitter islands, there's yield control on all the approaches, so vehicles entering have to yield to vehicles already in the circulating roadway. For time's sake, I'm going to go fast here, but there's really, I mentioned how there's all of these intersections treat left turns differently. Roundabouts, there's not really a left turn per se. There's more just entrances to the roundabout, and there's exits to the roundabout. So this a movement that could be made is a right turn, so barely entering the intersection, or going through from the other lane, or turning left. So again, it's not so much a left turn as just where the driver enters and where the driver exits, or even U-turn. So these are all the aspects of a modern roundabout. If some of these are missing, then it's not a modern roundabout per se. Like there's a circular intersection near where I live, but it doesn't have splitter islands, so it's not a modern roundabout. This is kind of a famous picture. This is from the state of New York. There was a large rotary. You notice that there are some overhead signs on it even. And it was converted into a much smaller modern roundabout. Here's a quick map of some roundabouts in Meridian. This I left in here. So prior to, they did some surveys, prior to roundabout construction, the dark bars were people's attitudes, very negative, neutral, some positive. Afterwards, it all changed to neutral to very positive. All right, so roundabouts and crashes. You can look this video up on YouTube. So back to conflicts. So there's a lot fewer conflicts in a roundabout. So there's only 8 on the left side. So this is a single lane roundabout or a single lane signal or stop controlled intersection. So 8 versus 32. So a significant difference. And most important, so all of the blue dots, which are crossing conflicts, they all go away on a roundabout. So some of the crashes that are at a typical intersection, angle crashes, left turns, those don't exist at a roundabout. So the worst thing that can happen at a roundabout is a side swipe, which is a much less severe crash. So you may have to go to the auto body shop, but you don't have to go to the hospital. Okay, so crashes are down compared to a signal. Crashes are down compared to a stop-controlled intersection. I'm going fast here.
Got 9 minutes.
Yeah, 9 more minutes. Okay, so some comparisons. One that I think is interesting is I'm not going to go through each of these, but the second to last line. So conventional intersection, using the intersection is complex. Roundabout is easier. So you may think that's backwards, but let me explain. Actually, I'm going to get to that in a minute. So roundabouts can be used in a corridor. In fact, there are some operational benefits to using them in a corridor. A signal works best when all the cars are bunched together so they can all go through on green. Roundabout, it's kind of the opposite. It works best when the cars are spread out. All right, so roundabouts and pedestrians. This is a topic that people think it gives roundabouts a bad name, but I'm going to show you that it's actually the opposite. Roundabouts improve pedestrian accommodations. So we're all taught when we're little, we've probably taught our kids to look left and look right before you cross the street. At roundabouts, you don't have to do that. So I have a pedestrian here at the bottom right of the picture. If they want to cross the bottom leg of this intersection, they just have to look left, and when there's a gap, cross to the center, to the splitter island, where there's a pedestrian refuge. To make the rest of the crossing, now look right and cross. So it's like crossing 2 one-way streets rather than a street where you have to look both ways. So it's actually easier to cross a roundabout. I will liken this to the conversation we just had about a Black Cat and Chinden signal, where there's discussion about adding a lane for right turns, right? So that adds distance to cross for a pedestrian. So a roundabout, you don't really have this. So it's crossing 2 lanes rather than through lanes and right turn lanes and left turn lanes and then more through lanes. There's just 2 lanes at a time, 1 or 2 lanes at a time. So this is conflicts with pedestrians. Again, there's fewer, there's half. Okay, so these are a few pictures from around town. ACHD built this roundabout on Whitewater Boulevard. I've crossed here as a pedestrian. Here's another picture this is from a newer roundabout they built on Fort Street, I think. This one's different in that it has a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, or those white rectangles under the pedestrian sign. A pedestrian can push a button and those flash. That doesn't require the driver to stop, but it does make it more visible. So it's a way to make the pedestrian crossing even more comfortable, shall we say. So roundabouts in schools, we've talked about, and will talk about, proposed roundabout at Eagle and Taconic. So the guide for designing and building roundabouts says that roundabouts may be optimal for schools, for being near schools. Again, for the same reasons that they're optimal for pedestrians. So it's like crossing two one-way streets. The crossing distances are narrower. The vehicle speeds are slower because of the roundabout geometry. So one thing that makes roundabouts near schools a little bit unique is that there may be need for two crossing guards instead of one, because the crosswalks are separated from the intersection somewhat. And so you may have to have a crossing guard for the white arrows and one for the green arrows. So here's a few examples from around town. So this is the first roundabout in Idaho. Commissioner Lewis designed this one too, by the way. This is by Columbia High School in Nampa. This is Middleton High School. There's two roundabouts by this high school. This is Hillside Middle School in Boise. So it's got a peanut-shaped roundabout. I just wanted to show the crossing here real quick. So this is so right next to the school, again, ACHD has given it the rectangular rapid flashing beacon treatment. This is also on Fort. This is Lincoln Elementary, I think. And then, bicycles and roundabouts. So bicycles in roundabouts have two options. So if the bicycle is approaching from the left, you see the bicycle sign and the green arrow. The bicyclist has two choices. Can either proceed through the roundabout as a vehicle. For the most part, the vehicle speeds in the roundabout are similar to bicycle speeds. So the bicyclist can travel through at really the same speed as the vehicles, or can exit on a ramp and traverse the roundabout as a pedestrian. So either through the roundabout or through the crosswalk, and then on the far side, rejoin the bike lane either from circulating or the sidewalks. So, all right, this is in here for Commissioner Ballard. Trucks and roundabouts. So the colored pavement near the circle is not just for decoration. So that's there for the large vehicle to cross over. So the trailer can off-track onto that colored pavement. That's what it's there for. Trucks are supposed to use it. Normal vehicles are, there's usually a curb that makes it uncomfortable for a vehicle to use it, but for a truck to off-track onto it without any problem. So this is my last one, Commissioner Ballard, Mr. Chairman. So this is a new, this was recently built in Rigby, Idaho. So this is the first modern roundabout on the state highway system. So that is my presentation.
Excellent. Questions for Mr. Lancaster?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hopkins?
So pedestrians going through a roundabout, are people stopping for them, or do they? I mean, you really don't want to stop in a roundabout. The whole idea is to flow through. So, you're always taught to yield for pedestrians in a roundabout. Does that change a little bit?
So no, it doesn't change any. So the laws still remain. So vehicles have to yield to pedestrians. That doesn't necessarily mean stop for pedestrians, right? But it does mean if there's a pedestrian crossing, you can't run them over. You have to stop for them. But if they have not yet started crossing, you don't have to stop, right? That's what yield means. So there's I went through this very quickly, but the crosswalk is set back from the circulating roadway a little bit. And again, this is an idea of moving conflicts, separating them physically. So the driver approaching the roundabout will see the pedestrian before they see the circulating traffic.
Mr. Lancaster?
Or leaving the roundabout, they see the pedestrian as they leave. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No. So back on Mr. Hopkins' question, if I'm driving down Meridian Road and I see someone that wants to cross the street, I'm supposed to stop whether or not they're in the crosswalk. But I just heard you to say that I only have to stop if they've entered the crosswalk. I guess I need to go back and study the traffic book.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I put on your law pants for a minute and read that law, and it says yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk is how it's written, as I recall. So
Okay, I didn't win that argument with the state trooper.
next
Okay.
time, call me and I'll help you out.
That's called, well, okay, I'll move on. All right, commissioners, appreciate the patience. We're just a click or two before 5:40. As always, I leave it open for comments, thoughts before we get to future meeting topics. Project review, Compass, Eagle, Lake Hazel, downtown alleyways, US 2026 comprehensive plan, Valley Regional Transit. We added the main King Crosswalk. Any further thoughts on expanding that list?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lancaster?
this is my annual reminder that in January, by ordinance, we need to do our elections.
Yes. All right, so we will, that's one fell swoop, is it not, that we make nominations and vote on the spot? Okay.
It's worked for us in the past.
All right.
Mr.
So,
Chair, I did see also in the Meridian Press today was the posting for an opening on the commission as well. So that is publicly posted for an opening on the commission, so we'll see where that takes us.
okay, so Mr. Lancaster campaigning starts then.
Let me, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McKinney?
that posting, I believe, is the result of my running for ACHD Commission. So this will be my last meeting with the Meridian Transportation Commission. I'll be taking up my position with the ACHD Commission starting in January. So let me just say it's been a pleasure working with all of you on this commission, and I appreciate the camaraderie, I guess, and the opportunity to work on these issues. And we'll, of course, have more contact. Being that I'm going to be on the ACHD Commission, I'll have plenty of opportunity to visit with the Meridian Transportation Commission, visit with the mayor, and so on. So I look forward to that, and thank you all very much.
Well, congratulations on your elevation to
Thank
the
you.
commission. Sorry to see you go. Anything else? Let's keep us all in mind over this holiday season and stay safe. Next meeting, January 4. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We go home. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinney,
Thanks, everyone.
congratulations, and it's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good work, guys.
Good job, man. Off the island. Oh.